This is also on Spotify now. Tonight, you are about to cross one of the world's greatest deserts, following ancient caravan routes that have connected distant civilizations for centuries. Together, you'll discover how patience, preparation, and quiet determination allowed ordinary travelers to journey across a landscape that, at first glance, seems almost impossible to cross. Before we begin, take a quiet moment to like this video and subscribe. But only if these slow, relaxing journeys through history are genuinely something you enjoy. And if you'd like, let us know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Now, dim the lights, settle in comfortably, and allow the modern world to quietly fade away as our journey begins. The coolness of the night still lingers as you stand at the edge of a settlement, where the familiar world begins to soften into something far older and far wider. Around you, quiet voices drift between mud brick homes, while the last preparations of the morning unfold without haste. Somewhere nearby, a leather water skin is being tied securely with practiced hands. A camel shifts its weight, its padded feet pressing gently into the earth as though already remembering the countless miles ahead. Nothing about this moment feels hurried. The journey has not yet begun, yet it already seems to have been waiting patiently for you. There is no grand announcement to mark your departure. No fanfare rises above the rooftops, and no crowd gathers to witness the travellers leaving. Instead, life continues with its ordinary rhythm. A baker tends a warm oven before dawn. Children carry bundles no larger than themselves, and traders quietly inspect goods that have crossed many hands before arriving here. You find comfort in the simplicity of it all. The road asks for nothing dramatic. It simply invites the next careful step. The morning carries a pleasant coolness that will not remain forever. As your eyes wander toward the southern horizon, the land slowly changes character. Fields and scattered trees begin to surrender to open ground where grasses grow thinner with every mile. Beyond that lies a landscape so immense that maps can only hint at its true scale. Somewhere ahead stretches the Sahara, the largest hot desert on Earth, covering millions of square kilometers across North Africa. It is easy to imagine it as empty, but those who have crossed it for centuries would gently remind you otherwise. They know it as a place of hidden routes, patient travelers, scattered wells, and distant communities connected by determination rather than paved roads. You begin to understand that the desert is not a barrier waiting to be conquered. It is a landscape that quietly teaches patience to everyone who enters it. Long before modern borders divided the continent, countless journeys unfolded across these sands. Merchants carried goods between kingdoms, separated by vast distances, while scholars, pilgrims, and guides shared the same winding paths. Ideas travelled beside precious cargo. Languages met beneath the shade of temporary camps. Customs crossed from one community to another, almost as naturally as the wind carried fine grains of sand across the dunes. The routes themselves shifted with changing seasons and reliable water sources. Yet the purpose remained remarkably steady: to connect people who might otherwise have remained strangers. The world feels wonderfully unhurried here. You picture yourself standing among those early travellers, not as someone looking back through history, but as someone quietly preparing to become part of it. The air carries the faint scent of dry earth warmed by yesterday's sun. Nearby, woven baskets rest beside folded blankets, while bundles wrapped in sturdy cloth wait to be loaded onto patient animals. Every object has been chosen with care because unnecessary weight soon becomes an unwelcome companion. Practical decisions shape every journey long before the first mile is traveled. Crossing the Sahara was never simply about reaching another destination. Every successful journey depended upon careful planning, trusted knowledge, and a deep respect for the landscape itself. Experienced travelers learned to recognize subtle landmarks invisible to unfamiliar eyes. A distant line of dark hills, a cluster of hardy shrubs, or the memory of a reliable well could mean the difference between a comfortable day and an exhausting one. Such knowledge was rarely written in books. It passed quietly from one generation to the next, carried in conversation as faithfully as any trade good. You can almost sense that invisible map unfolding around you. The settlement behind you belongs to the northern edge of a much larger network of exchange that linked the Mediterranean world with the great kingdoms of West Africa. Across centuries, cities such as Sijil Masa, Gadames, and later Timbuktu would become familiar names to those who knew these roads well. Although separated by remarkable distances, each place formed another peaceful stopping point along a route that rewarded patience more than speed. Travelers measured progress not by hours, but by camps, wells, and changing horizons. Nothing seems eager to hurry. The people preparing nearby understand this instinctively. Their clothing is designed not for appearance, but for comfort, beneath a powerful sun and against occasional desert winds. Loose layers allow air to move gently while shielding skin from heat. Faces may be wrapped with cloth that protects against blowing sand as much as it preserves moisture. Every detail reflects generations of quiet observation. These garments are not inventions of fashion, but companions shaped by experience. You begin to notice how every part of the journey has already been influenced by the land ahead. Even before the desert appears beneath your feet, its presence quietly guides decisions. Water containers are inspected again. Leather straps are tightened with patient hands. Supplies are arranged so that the most important items remain easy to reach. There is no sense of worry in these preparations, only quiet confidence earned through repetition. A gentle breeze passes across the waiting caravan. Although the Sahara often appears empty from a distance, it is home to remarkable variety. Beyond the famous rolling dunes lie broad gravel plains, ancient rocky plateaus, seasonal valleys, and scattered mountain ranges that rise unexpectedly above the horizon. Some regions receive almost no rainfall for years, while others briefly awaken after rare storms, producing delicate flowers that bloom only for a short time before disappearing once again beneath the returning heat. The desert is constantly changing, though its changes unfold slowly enough that only patient travelers truly notice them. You imagine following one of the old caravan paths as the landscape unfolds a little differently each day. One morning might begin beside low hills, where the wind whistles softly between weathered stones. Another may find you crossing wide open plains, where the horizon seems impossibly distant in every direction. Farther along, graceful dunes gather in gentle curves that shift almost imperceptibly beneath the breeze. Each environment asks for slightly different rhythms of travel, encouraging careful observation instead of haste. Everything moves with quiet purpose. The importance of these ancient routes cannot be measured only by the goods that passed along them. gold from the south eventually reached distant markets around the Mediterranean and beyond. Salt cut from desert mines became just as valuable in regions where preserving food depended upon it. Ivory, leather, textiles, dates, and finely crafted metalwork all found new homes through peaceful exchange. Yet, alongside these treasures traveled stories, beliefs, languages, scientific knowledge, and friendships formed between people who might never have met without the patient road connecting them. History rarely announces itself while it is happening. Most travelers crossing these routes likely thought first about tomorrow's camp, the condition of their animals, or the location of the next well. They probably did not imagine that future generations would study the paths beneath their feet. Yet, every ordinary journey quietly contributed to a network that shaped entire civilizations across Africa. The road asks only patience. You find comfort in knowing that this journey is not driven by urgency. Unlike stories that celebrate dramatic discoveries or sudden victories, the Trans-Saharan trade routes grew stronger through consistency. One caravan followed another. Wells were remembered. Trust was earned through honest exchange. Generations returned to familiar stopping places until those locations became dependable threads woven across one of Earth's largest deserts. Great achievements often emerge from countless ordinary days lived with care. As you continue looking southward, the horizon seems less intimidating and more inviting. Distance no longer feels empty. Instead, it suggests possibility. Somewhere beyond sight, another camp prepares its morning meal. Somewhere farther still, craftsmen shape goods that will eventually begin their own long journeys north. The road already exists, patiently waiting for the next group of travelers willing to follow its quiet rhythm. You are not setting out to conquer the desert. You are preparing to understand it one measured step at a time. The Sahara asks visitors to listen more than they speak, to observe more than they rush, and to accept that progress often arrives gradually. In return, it offers something surprisingly rare: the chance to experience distance without distraction, movement without urgency, and history unfolding at the pace of careful footsteps. A few birds circle briefly overhead before disappearing toward the distant edge of the settlement. Behind you, familiar sounds begin to fade into the background as attention naturally turns toward the open land. Ahead, the road is still unseen from where you stand, yet its presence is unmistakable. Countless feet, hooves, and padded camel tracks have already shaped its invisible course across centuries. Soon, your own footsteps will quietly join theirs. The journey is ready whenever you are. The gentle sounds of the settlement gradually settle behind you, replaced by the quieter rhythm of preparation that belongs only to those about to travel. There is still no urgency in the air. No one seems eager to be the first to leave. Experienced travelers know that a journey across the Sahara rewards careful beginnings far more than hurried ones. A final knot is tightened, another bundle adjusted, and one last drink of cool water is taken, before the familiar comforts of the town slowly give way to the open road. You find yourself noticing how much trust rests in ordinary things. A well-stitched leather bag, a sturdy rope woven from palm fiber, a carefully repaired sandal, or a wooden bowl carried from home may seem unremarkable at first glance. Yet, on a journey measured in hundreds of miles, these simple possessions become dependable companions. Every object has earned its place through usefulness, rather than appearance. The morning remains pleasantly still. As people gather near the waiting animals, conversation stays soft and practical. There is little need for lengthy discussion because everyone understands the routine. The order of loading has been refined over countless expeditions. Heavier goods are balanced carefully. Water is positioned where it can be reached without disturbing the entire load. Food is packed securely against wandering animals and blowing sand. Small mistakes made here would quietly accompany the caravan for weeks, so every task receives the attention it deserves. You begin to appreciate that preparation itself is part of the journey. It is not a delay before the real adventure begins. It is the first lesson the desert offers. Patience starts long before the first footprint touches the sand. The Trans-Saharan trade routes were never marked by permanent roads stretching across the landscape. Instead, they existed as living memories carried by generations of travelers. A guide might recognize the shape of a distant ridge that seemed ordinary to everyone else. Another would remember where seasonal rains sometimes filled shallow pools. Others relied upon stars after sunset, using familiar constellations that appeared faithfully above the open desert. Together, these fragments of knowledge formed pathways invisible to those making the journey for the first time. You imagine how reassuring it must have felt to travel beside people who knew the land so well. Their confidence did not come from ignoring the desert's challenges, but from respecting them. Every decision reflected experience collected slowly over many years. Nothing feels rushed. Far to the south, the great kingdoms of West Africa awaited the arrival of these caravans, while northern cities prepared goods that would soon begin their own long journey across the sands. Gold traveled north from regions rich with river systems and skilled miners. Salt moved south from vast desert deposits, where enormous blocks were carefully cut from the earth. Neither resource was simply valuable, because it was rare. Each served practical purposes that shaped daily life, making the long crossings worthwhile despite the immense distances involved. The exchange of goods also encouraged something less visible, but equally important. Languages blended naturally in marketplaces where people from different regions met face to face. Travelers carried stories gathered from distant settlements. Religious ideas spread peacefully alongside merchants. Scholars copied books that found new readers hundreds of miles away. A single caravan could transport not only trade goods, but also knowledge that would continue its own journey long after the travelers themselves had returned home. The breeze carries no urgency. Looking around, you notice that the animals appear remarkably calm. Camels kneel patiently while their burdens are secured with practiced hands. They have become one of history's most reliable companions for desert travel, though this was not always the case. Long before camels became the dominant animals of the Sahara, other methods of transport were used with far greater difficulty. The widespread adoption of the dromedary camel transformed these routes over many centuries, allowing merchants to travel farther with heavier loads while using less water than many other animals could manage. Watching them now, it becomes easy to understand why they earned such importance. Their broad feet spread naturally across soft ground. Long eyelashes help protect their eyes from blowing sand. Thick lips allow them to feed on hardy desert plants that many animals would ignore. They are not remarkable because they overcome nature, but because they are perfectly suited to it. You quietly admire how every successful journey depends upon harmony rather than force. Nearby, woven baskets reveal small glimpses of the supplies that will sustain the travelers. Dried dates provide dependable sweetness and lasting energy. Grain waits to become simple meals shared at evening camps. Leather water skins, carefully maintained, will preserve one of the journey's most precious resources. Small cooking pots, blankets, spare sandals, and tools for simple repairs all rest beside trade goods destined for distant markets. Every item tells a quiet story about daily life on the road. Everything unfolds in its own time. You begin to picture the many landscapes that lie beyond today's horizon. Some days, the caravan will move across firm gravel plains where each step feels steady beneath your feet. On others, softer sand will slow the pace, encouraging shorter distances before evening arrives. Occasionally, rocky hills will interrupt the openness, offering welcome shade for a brief rest. Dry riverbeds, known as wadis, may appear unexpectedly, reminding travelers that even the driest places can briefly awaken when rare rains fall many miles away. The Sahara is often imagined as endless dunes, yet those who truly know it understand its remarkable variety. Every change in terrain gently influences the day's rhythm without ever demanding unnecessary drama. A quiet sense of anticipation settles comfortably around you. You think about the countless people who once stood exactly as you do now, looking toward an unfamiliar horizon while trusting generations of experience to guide them forward. Some sought profit through trade, others traveled for learning or pilgrimage. Some simply followed work wherever the caravan roads might lead. Although their reasons differed, they all shared the same patient understanding that crossing the desert was measured one camp at a time rather than one destination at a time. Perhaps this explains why the old trade routes endured for so many centuries. They were built not upon haste, but upon reliability. Travelers returned because they trusted the people they met, the wells they remembered, and the careful customs that made peaceful exchange possible. Success depended less upon speed than upon cooperation. Another peaceful moment passes. As you continue walking toward the waiting caravan, the settlement behind you grows quieter without truly disappearing. Its familiar sounds blend gently into memory, while open land ahead becomes more inviting with every step. Soon there will be fewer buildings, fewer cultivated fields, and more space between the landmarks that once guided daily life. Gradually, the rhythm of the desert will replace the rhythm of the town. For now, however, there is no need to hurry. One final glance reveals smoke rising lazily from cooking fires, neighbors greeting one another as another ordinary day begins, and artisans opening workshops where work will continue long after today's caravan has vanished beyond the horizon. The world behind you remains peaceful, even as your own path begins to stretch towards something much larger. You draw a slow breath, feeling the cool morning air before the day's warmth gradually arrives. Ahead lies a journey that will reveal not only one of history's greatest trade networks, but also the quiet routines that made such remarkable connections possible. Every mile will carry its own lessons, offered patiently by the landscape and the people who have learned to live alongside it. The first footprints across the edge of the great desert are now only moments away. The first footprints appear almost unnoticed. There is no clear line where the familiar world ends and the Sahara truly begins. Instead, the change arrives gradually, almost politely. The earth beneath your feet grows firmer in some places and softer in others. Patches of hardy grass become less frequent, while stretches of open ground begin to linger a little longer between signs of vegetation. It is the kind of transformation that rewards patient attention rather than quick observation. You walk alongside the caravan at an easy pace, matching the measured rhythm that generations of travelers discovered long before you. The camels neither hurry nor hesitate. Their steady movement quietly establishes the tempo for everyone else. Even those making this crossing for the first time soon find themselves adjusting to the same calm cadence, allowing the caravan to move as a single, peaceful procession rather than a collection of individuals. Every step has its own rhythm. Amadou, walking at the front, occasionally lifts his eyes toward the horizon before returning his attention to the ground ahead. His movements are subtle enough that they might easily be overlooked, yet each glance reflects years of familiarity with this landscape. He's not searching for dramatic landmarks. Instead, he notices slight changes in the terrain, the direction of the wind, and distant rock formations whose shapes have guided countless caravans before this one. You begin to understand that navigation here depends less upon certainty than upon quiet observation. The desert rarely announces where to go. It simply offers gentle clues to those willing to notice them. The air still carries the coolness left behind by the night. As the settlement slowly disappears behind you, another kind of silence begins to emerge. It is not complete silence, for the journey has its own collection of gentle sounds. You hear the soft padding of camel feet against the ground, the occasional creak of leather straps settling beneath their loads, and the quiet brushing of woven cloth as travelers adjust their robes against the morning breeze. Somewhere farther back, someone hums a simple melody no louder than the wind itself before letting it fade naturally into the open air. The sounds never compete with one another. They simply become part of the landscape. Looking ahead, you notice that the caravan keeps a comfortable distance between animals. This spacing is no accident. It allows each camel to move naturally without crowding the next, while reducing unnecessary strain on both animals and travelers. Such practical habits developed slowly over centuries, shaped by experience rather than instruction. No written rule demands this arrangement. It simply works, and so it continues from one generation to the next. The wisdom of these routes often survives through repetition instead of explanation. Before long, the ground begins to reveal small reminders that others have passed this way. A faint depression where countless feet have gradually compacted the earth. Fragments of weathered stone stacked long ago to mark a reliable direction. The remains of an old fire pit where another caravan once prepared an evening meal before continuing onward. None of these signs stand out dramatically, yet together they form a quiet conversation between travelers separated by decades, sometimes centuries. You find comfort in following paths that have served so many before you. The morning gradually becomes warmer. Far overhead, the sky stretches without interruption, its vastness making the land below seem even more expansive. Without forests or tall buildings to frame your view, distances become surprisingly difficult to judge. A rocky hill that appears close may require another hour of steady walking before you reach it. Likewise, a cluster of darker ground that seems insignificant from afar may eventually reveal itself as a broad plateau, extending far beyond the horizon. The desert teaches patience through perspective. This immense landscape has always encouraged careful planning because appearances alone can be misleading. Experienced traders learned to estimate their progress, not simply by what they could see, but by the time required to reach familiar landmarks. Distances became stories remembered through experience, rather than measurements written on maps. Nothing here is left to chance. The road you now follow belongs to one of history's most remarkable networks of exchange. Over many centuries, these routes connected the fertile lands bordering the Mediterranean with powerful kingdoms such as Ghana, Mali, and Songhai farther south. Gold from West Africa reached distant markets across North Africa and Europe, while salt travelled in the opposite direction, becoming essential to communities where preserving food depended upon its steady supply. Yet those valuable goods represented only part of what crossed the Sahara. Every successful journey also carried knowledge. A merchant returning north might describe unfamiliar farming techniques seen near the Niger River. A scholar could share ideas gathered from distant centers of learning. Pilgrims exchanged customs, languages, and religious traditions that quietly spread across regions without armies or conquest. The caravan became more than transportation. It became a moving bridge between cultures whose conversations continued long after the travelers themselves had moved on. The breeze feels pleasantly dry against your face. As another peaceful mile passes, you begin noticing the remarkable resilience of the plants that still appear from time to time. Low shrubs cling to life where moisture lingers beneath the surface. Tough grasses bend gently beneath the wind without breaking. Small acacia trees occasionally interrupt the openness, their spreading branches offering welcome shade that travelers have appreciated for generations. Every living thing here has learned to make careful use of limited resources. The people crossing these routes learned the same lesson. Water is never treated casually. Whenever an opportunity arises to refill leather skins from a dependable well, the task is completed carefully and without delay. Containers are checked for leaks. Lids are secured firmly. No one wastes effort carrying more than necessary. Yet, no one neglects the importance of preparing for the miles still ahead. These habits eventually become second nature, quietly shaping every day's routine. Nothing here encourages unnecessary excess. You begin to appreciate how different this rhythm feels from many modern journeys. There are no clocks demanding constant attention, no hurried schedules forcing uncomfortable speed, and no expectation that every hour must produce visible progress. Instead, the caravan measures success through consistency. A comfortable pace maintained day after day carries travelers much farther than bursts of exhausting effort ever could. It is a lesson the desert repeats without speaking. A pair of birds briefly glides overhead before disappearing toward distant rocky ground. Their appearance reminds you that life exists even in landscapes often described as empty. Small animals remain hidden during the warmer hours. Insects find shelter beneath stones. Foxes and gazelles move more freely during cooler parts of the day. Although encounters may be brief, they quietly reveal that the Sahara has always supported forms of life perfectly adapted to its unique conditions. The world feels peacefully alive. As the sun climbs a little higher, Amadou gently raises one hand, signaling a brief pause before the caravan continues toward the next familiar landmark. There is no concern in the gesture. It simply allows everyone to adjust their loads, check the animals, and enjoy a few unhurried moments before walking once more. Someone offers a handful of dried dates to a nearby companion who accepts them with a grateful smile and a quiet word of thanks. The simple exchange feels entirely ordinary. Perhaps that is what makes these journeys so remarkable. History often remembers kings, battles, and famous cities, yet the Trans-Saharan trade routes depended just as much upon small moments like these: shared food, trusted companions, careful preparation, and patient footsteps repeated across generations. Without such ordinary acts of cooperation, no caravan would have travelled very far. You look ahead once more. The horizon remains distant, calm, and inviting. Beyond it waits another day of steady travel, another collection of landscapes, and another opportunity to understand how countless ordinary people quietly connect entire civilizations through persistence rather than spectacle. You adjust your pace to match the caravan once again. The journey has truly begun. The caravan resumes its steady pace without the need for a spoken command. One by one, the camels rise with remarkable ease, their loads settling gently into place as they begin to move. The soft rhythm of padded feet soon becomes familiar enough that you almost stop noticing it. Before long, your own steps fall naturally into the same measured cadence. There is no race against time here. The road asks only for consistency, and everyone seems content to offer exactly that. The coolness of the early morning gradually gives way to gentle warmth. As the settlement disappears completely behind the horizon, the feeling of departure quietly settles in. There is no dramatic farewell lingering in your thoughts. Instead, you find yourself paying closer attention to the landscape unfolding ahead. The open ground stretches farther with every mile, interrupted now and then by low outcrops of ancient stone that have watched generations of travelers pass without changing their patient silhouettes. You begin to notice how differently distance behaves here. In more crowded places, the next village or bend in the road often appears within easy reach. Across the Sahara, the horizon seems to move away as you approach it, always revealing another quiet stretch beyond. Yet, rather than feeling discouraging, this endlessness becomes strangely comforting. There is no pressure to arrive quickly. Every mile is simply another peaceful part of the journey. The world feels pleasantly spacious. A light breeze brushes across your face, carrying only the faint scent of warm earth. Unlike the fragrant forests or flowering fields found elsewhere, the desert offers subtler aromas. Dry stone warmed by the morning sun, leather softened through years of use, woven baskets holding dates and grain, and the occasional hint of wood smoke lingering from a caravan that camped here days before, all combine into a quiet atmosphere that belongs only to these ancient routes. Amadou slows briefly as the caravan approaches a broad patch of darker ground. It is not an obstacle, but a change in terrain. Loose sand gives way to firmer gravel, making the next stretch of walking a little easier for both people and animals. Such small changes matter more than they first appear. Experienced travelers often planned their daily distances around the nature of the ground beneath their feet as much as the miles ahead. The road quietly teaches observation. You look down and notice that the gravel beneath you is made from stones worn smooth over countless centuries. Long before caravans crossed this region, rivers once flowed through parts of the Sahara during far wetter periods in Earth's history. Those rivers disappeared thousands of years ago as climates gradually changed. Yet they left behind valleys, ancient channels, and scattered stones that still influence the routes travelers choose today. The landscape carries memories far older than any kingdom. Rather than resisting these natural features, the caravan works with them. Where the ground is firm, the pace remains steady. Where softer sand appears, everyone instinctively shortens their stride, conserving energy without needing to discuss it. There is something reassuring about watching so many people move together with such quiet understanding. Nothing feels forced. Ahead, a line of acacia trees slowly comes into view. They are not dense enough to form a woodland, only a small gathering of hardy trees that have survived where underground moisture remains just within reach. Their presence promises nothing extravagant, only a welcome place to pause for a short while before continuing onward. As the caravan reaches their shade, bundles are left exactly where they are. No one unloads unnecessary cargo for such a brief stop. A few travelers stretch their legs, others quietly inspect leather straps that have loosened slightly during the morning's walk. Water is shared carefully, each person drinking only what is needed. Conservation here never feels restrictive. It simply reflects an understanding developed through generations of experience. The shade feels pleasantly cool against your skin. Nearby, one of the older merchants gently brushes fine dust from a folded piece of cloth, protecting several small packages. He notices your curiosity and offers only a few quiet words. Every bundle has someone waiting for it. The sentence is simple, yet it lingers in your thoughts. Each package resting upon these camels represents more than merchandise. Somewhere beyond the horizon, craftsmen, families, scholars, and traders expect their arrival. A block of salt may preserve food for months. Fine cloth may become ceremonial clothing. Copper tools may support another season of farming. A manuscript copied by careful hands may find new readers hundreds of miles away. Every object carries a purpose extending far beyond its own weight. The journey continues quietly. As you resume walking, your attention shifts upward for a moment. The sky remains brilliantly clear, allowing the sun to cast sharp but gentle shadows across the ground. Clouds are uncommon here, and their rare appearance often becomes a topic of conversation among experienced travelers. The openness above seems to match the openness below, creating a remarkable sense of space that is difficult to experience anywhere else. Despite the vastness surrounding you, the caravan never feels isolated. Shared routines create a quiet sense of companionship. Someone adjusts another traveler's load without being asked. A waterskin is passed along the line. A camel that slows briefly receives patient encouragement as rather than frustration. Cooperation is so ordinary that it almost becomes invisible. You begin to understand that this spirit of mutual support helped make the Trans-Saharan trade routes dependable for centuries. The desert rewarded preparation, knowledge, and trust far more than individual ambition. Another quiet stretch of the journey unfolds. Far ahead, the horizon shimmers gently beneath the warming air. The effect is subtle, making distant ground appear almost like water before slowly returning to solid earth as you continue forward. Travelers familiar with the Sahara understand these shimmering illusions well. They neither chase them nor fear them. They simply continue walking with the same steady confidence, allowing experience to guide them instead of appearances. You quietly adopt the same approach. With every measured step, the settlement behind you belongs a little more to memory, while the great desert ahead begins to feel less like an unknown wilderness and more like a patient companion. Its rhythms are becoming your rhythms. Its pace is becoming your own. The first day upon the ancient Trans-Saharan Trade Route unfolds exactly as those who know it best would hope, calmly, steadily, and with quiet purpose. A faint sound reaches you before you discover its source. It is not the call of a person or the movement of another caravan. Instead, it is the quiet tapping of loose stones shifting beneath the careful steps of the camels as the ground begins to rise, almost imperceptibly. The change in elevation is gentle enough that it asks for no extra effort, yet from this slightly higher ground the view stretches farther than before. Behind you, the settlement has vanished entirely, hidden now by distance and the subtle curves of the land. Ahead, the Sahara opens itself with remarkable patience. There is no sense of crossing a boundary. Rather, it feels as though the familiar world has slowly unfolded into something wider. Amadou pauses for only a moment, studying the horizon with relaxed attention. He's not searching for the route in the way a stranger might. Instead, he is confirming what experience already suggests. A dark ridge of stone sits far to the east, while a cluster of low hills marks another reliable point farther west. Between them lies the path the caravan will quietly follow throughout the day. Invisible to unfamiliar eyes, it has been remembered for generations. Knowledge here is carried as carefully as any valuable cargo. You begin to notice that every traveller occasionally lifts their gaze, not because they are uncertain, but because the landscape itself encourages awareness. The desert changes gradually. A stretch of firm ground becomes softer beneath your feet. The breeze shifts direction almost unnoticed. Shadows shorten as the sun climbs higher. None of these changes demands immediate action, yet together they shape every mile that follows. The road reveals itself little by little. Before long, one of the younger members of the caravan kneels briefly beside a patch of ground where several faint tracks cross the route. They belong to small desert animals that pass during the cooler hours before dawn. The marks are delicate, preserved by still air and undisturbed sand. An older traveller smiles quietly before brushing them away with the side of his sandal. "Tomorrow," he says softly, "there will be new ones." No further explanation is needed. The desert belongs to many lives beyond the caravan. As the morning continues, the warmth becomes more noticeable, though never uncomfortable. The travellers adjust naturally. Robes are wrapped a little more securely. Head coverings settle into place, protecting faces from both sunlight and the occasional gust of wind carrying fine grains of sand. These movements happen almost without thought, repeated so often that they have become part of the rhythm of travel itself. Everything has its proper moment. You reflect on how remarkable these ancient routes truly were. Long before modern highways connected continents, caravans crossed one of the world's largest deserts with surprising regularity. Success did not depend upon permanent roads or signposts. It depended upon memory, trust, careful planning, and an understanding that had been refined across centuries. Entire communities relied upon this knowledge, preserving it through quiet instruction rather than written manuals. That shared experience became one of the Sahara's greatest treasures. Somewhere far ahead, beyond many days of steady travel, prosperous cities await the arrival of caravans like this one. In places such as Timbuktu, Gao, and Walata, merchants will inspect familiar goods with experienced eyes. Gold dust will be weighed carefully. Blocks of salt will change hands. Fine textiles, leatherwork, books, and crafted metal objects will continue their own journeys toward distant destinations. Yet those busy marketplaces still feel wonderfully far away. For now, your world is measured by footsteps rather than cities. The miles slip quietly behind you. The caravan reaches a broad expanse where the ground becomes almost perfectly level. Walking here requires little effort, and conversation grows even quieter as everyone settles into the comforting rhythm of movement. There is no need to fill the silence. The steady pace, the gentle breeze, and the vast landscape provide all the company required. You find that your breathing has naturally matched the rhythm of your steps. It is easy to imagine why experienced travelers often describe these journeys as exercises in patience rather than endurance. Progress rarely announces itself from one hour to the next. Yet, when evening eventually arrives, many miles have quietly slipped beneath your feet without ever demanding haste. The desert teaches through repetition instead of instruction. A pair of camels briefly turns their heads toward one another before continuing onward, their loads balanced with remarkable care. They have become trusted partners in this ancient exchange, capable of carrying heavy cargo across immense distances while remaining calm beneath conditions that would challenge many other animals. Their steady temperament helps shape the caravan's own peaceful character. Watching them, you realize that nothing here succeeds through force. Everything succeeds through balance. The warmth of the day continues to grow gently, and Amadou glances toward the position of the sun before offering a simple signal to continue toward the next resting place. No one asks how much farther it is. The question has little meaning here. Distance is experienced rather than counted, and every traveler seems content to let the day unfold exactly as it chooses. You follow without hesitation. Already, the ancient Trans-Saharan Trade Route feels less like an unfamiliar road and more like a quiet companion whose steady rhythm invites you farther into one of history's greatest journeys. The landscape begins to change so gradually that you almost miss it at first. The broad gravel plain beneath your feet gives way to patches of lighter sand that gather in shallow ripples, shaped by winds that have traveled across the Sahara for countless generations. These are not the towering dunes that often appear in paintings and stories. Instead, they are gentle waves upon the earth, rising and falling so softly that the caravan crosses them without slowing. Every landscape here seems content to reveal itself one careful detail at a time. You discover that the desert rarely announces its changes. It simply allows you to notice them. Amadou glances briefly towards the wind before adjusting the caravan's course by only a few degrees. The movement is so slight that most travelers continue walking without realizing anything has changed. Yet, this small correction keeps everyone on firmer ground, avoiding a wider stretch of loose sand farther ahead. Such decisions are made quietly throughout the day, each one saving a little effort that gradually becomes significant over the course of many weeks. Experience often appears almost invisible. As you continue onward, the breeze carries tiny grains of sand across the surface of the ground. They gather around small stones before moving on again, slowly reshaping the landscape in ways too gentle to notice from one moment to the next. Over years, these patient winds sculpt ridges, smooth rough edges, and create patterns that vanish almost as quickly as they appear. The Sahara is never completely still. It simply changes at a pace that encourages patience. You find yourself paying closer attention to the caravan's shadows stretching across the pale ground. Earlier in the morning, they reached far behind each traveller. Now they have grown noticeably shorter as the sun rises higher into the sky. Without clocks or bells marking the hours, the movement of light quietly measures the passing day. It is a simple reminder that time has always been understood in many different ways. Nothing here seems eager to count the hours. A faint fragrance reaches you as the caravan passes a cluster of hardy desert shrubs. The scent is subtle, dry, slightly earthy, with a hint of resin warmed by the growing sun. It lingers only for a moment before the breeze carries it away again. Such moments become memorable precisely because they are uncommon. In a landscape where every source of shade, water, or vegetation matters, even the smallest change gently captures your attention. You begin to appreciate how carefully the travelers observe their surroundings. No detail feels too small. One merchant kneels beside a camel whose load has shifted slightly during the morning's walk. He loosens a leather strap, adjusts the balance of two woven baskets, and secures everything again with practiced hands. The entire task takes less than a minute. When he finishes, he gives the animal a gentle pat along its neck before returning to the caravan's steady rhythm. There is no frustration in the movement, only quiet care. These caravans often carried goods whose value extended far beyond their appearance. A bundle of fine woven cloth represented months of skilled craftsmanship. Carefully shaped copper tools might eventually support farmers hundreds of miles away. Small packets of fragrant spices could transform ordinary meals in distant towns. Even simple writing materials, paper, ink, and bound manuscripts were precious cargo, helping knowledge travel alongside commerce across the immense desert. Every bundle tells part of a larger story. As another peaceful stretch of ground unfolds before you, you begin imagining the generations who walked these same routes centuries apart. The faces changed, kingdoms rose and faded, new rulers governed distant cities. Yet the road itself remained remarkably familiar. Travelers continued seeking reliable wells, welcoming resting places, and honest exchanges. The rhythm endured because human needs remained wonderfully constant. People still required food. They still valued trust. They still looked forward to reaching the next camp before evening. The journey feels connected across time. Far ahead, the outline of a low ridge slowly grows more distinct. It offers no dramatic destination, only another landmark that quietly confirms the caravan is following the correct course. Such natural features became dependable companions for those who knew the Sahara well. A particular hill, an unusual rock formation, or a solitary acacia tree could remain fixed for generations, while the shifting sands around them slowly changed. The land remembers in its own way. You notice that conversation has grown even quieter as everyone settles into the comfortable rhythm of walking. No one seems uncomfortable with the silence. Shared purpose makes constant speech unnecessary. Occasionally, someone points toward a distant feature, or exchanges a brief observation with a companion, but the desert itself seems to encourage thoughtful quiet, rather than endless discussion. The breeze carries only soft voices. It is easy to understand why patience became one of the most respected qualities among experienced caravan travelers. The Sahara offers very little that can be hurried. Wells appear where they have always appeared. The sun follows its familiar path across the sky. Evening arrives when it is ready. Attempts to force the journey only create unnecessary fatigue, while steady consistency rewards everyone equally. The road has no interest in urgency, only in perseverance. Gradually, you realize that your own thoughts have begun to slow as well. The concerns that belonged to the settlement behind you seem increasingly distant, replaced by simple observations of the world immediately around you. The texture of the ground beneath your sandals, the gentle sway of the camels, the warmth of sunlight balanced by the occasional passing breeze. Nothing asks for more attention than the present moment. Ahead, Amadou raises one hand once again, indicating another gentle change in direction as the caravan begins making its way toward the next familiar stopping place. Somewhere beyond that point, another day of the ancient Trans-Saharan journey will continue to unfold, with the same calm rhythm that has guided travelers across these remarkable landscapes for centuries. And without ever feeling hurried, you quietly follow. The low ridge grows nearer with every measured step, though it never seems to approach as quickly as your eyes first suggest. Distance behaves differently here. Without trees, buildings, or winding roads to provide familiar points of reference, the desert quietly reshapes your sense of scale. What appears to be an easy walk away often requires another hour of patient travel, while a small rise in the land may reveal an entirely new horizon beyond it. You begin to trust your pace more than your eyes. The caravan does the same. No one quickens their stride simply because the ridge seems close. The travelers understand that steady movement carries them farther than bursts of unnecessary effort. Their confidence comes not from guessing the distance, but from accepting it exactly as it is. The road continues quietly. As the ground rises almost imperceptibly, small fragments of dark stone become more common beneath your feet. Many of them have been polished smooth by centuries of wind, carrying fine grains of sand across their surfaces. Nature has become a patient sculptor here, working without haste and without interruption. Looking closely, you realize that every stone has its own quiet history, shaped over spans of time almost impossible to imagine. The Sahara is ancient in ways that reach far beyond human memory. Long before merchants crossed these routes, before kingdoms flourished along the Niger River, and before written histories described these landscapes, this region experienced climates very different from those of today. Thousands of years ago, parts of the Sahara supported lakes, grasslands, and abundant wildlife. Rock paintings discovered throughout the desert still depict giraffes, cattle, elephants, and people living in environments that seem almost unimaginable when standing here now. The land carries memories beneath its silence. Although those greener centuries gradually passed, people adapted alongside the changing environment. Rather than abandoning the desert completely, communities learned to understand its rhythms. Wells became lifelines. Seasonal knowledge became invaluable. Trade routes slowly emerged wherever experience proved that careful planning could overcome great distances. You realize that adaptation has always been one of humanity's quiet strengths. A soft flutter of wings draws your attention upward. A raven glides effortlessly above the rocky slope, before settling onto an outcrop overlooking the caravan. It watches for only a few moments before lifting back into the clear sky. Its appearance feels perfectly natural, another reminder that even the widest desert supports lives that have learned to flourish within its unique conditions. Nothing here seems out of place. As the caravan reaches the crest of the ridge, Amadou slows without speaking. One by one, the travelers pause, not because they are tired, but because the view ahead deserves a quiet moment of appreciation. Beyond the ridge stretches another immense expanse of open country, its surface gently alternating between gravel plains and ribbons of pale sand that wind toward the distant horizon. Here and there, isolated hills rise like quiet islands above the surrounding landscape. Far beyond them, the air shimmers softly beneath the midday warmth, blurring the meeting point between earth and sky until the horizon almost disappears. The openness feels remarkably peaceful. No one lingers for long. The pause serves only to confirm the route and allow everyone to absorb the changing landscape before continuing. The guide offers a small nod, and the caravan begins descending the opposite side of the ridge with the same calm rhythm it has maintained since morning. The journey never loses its gentle pace. As you walk downhill, you notice how the camels naturally adjust their footing. Their broad feet grip the uneven ground with surprising confidence, placing each step carefully without hesitation. Watching them, it becomes clear that they are not merely carrying the caravan across the Sahara. They are reading the terrain in ways that make the journey easier for everyone following behind. Their patience seems endless. One of the older traders reaches into a small woven pouch hanging from his saddle and removes a handful of roasted chickpeas. He quietly shares them with the people walking nearby before returning the pouch to its place. There is no ceremony in the gesture. It is simply another ordinary kindness that helps sustain both body and spirit during long days on the road. Simple generosity travels easily here. You think about how these routes depended upon relationships just as much as geography. Successful trade required confidence that agreements would be honored, that guides knew dependable wells, and that hospitality would often be found at familiar stopping places. Reputation became a form of wealth carried without weight. A trustworthy merchant might be welcomed across thousands of miles because previous journeys had quietly established that trust. Such reputations were built slowly, like the road itself. The warmth of the afternoon settles gently across the landscape, encouraging everyone to conserve energy rather than resist the climate. Robes continue shielding travelers from direct sunlight, while allowing air to circulate beneath the fabric. Every choice reflects generations of practical understanding rather than discomfort. What might appear unusual to an unfamiliar visitor simply feels natural to those who know the desert well. The breeze remains surprisingly kind. Far ahead, almost hidden against the pale ground, a small cluster of palm trees slowly comes into view. Their appearance is subtle enough that you almost mistake them for another rocky outcrop. Yet, as the caravan continues, their unmistakable shapes become clearer. An oasis, still many miles away, but visible now. The sight changes no one's pace. No excited voices rise from the caravan. No one points dramatically toward the trees. Everyone simply continues walking, confident that steady footsteps will eventually bring them there. Water found too soon exists only in imagination. water reached patiently becomes part of the journey itself. You quietly admire this discipline. The oasis represents far more than a place to refill water skins. For centuries, such places became natural meeting points where caravans rested, exchanged news, traded small goods, repaired equipment, and learned about conditions farther along the route. Travelers arriving from opposite directions carried stories from distant kingdoms, allowing information to spread across the Sahara almost as steadily as commerce itself. Even rest had its place within the network of trade. As another peaceful mile slips beneath your feet, you realize that the desert no longer feels unfamiliar. Its rhythms have become reassuring rather than uncertain. The silence is no longer empty. The immense distances no longer seem intimidating. Instead, the Sahara begins revealing itself as generations of travelers understood it, not as a lifeless wilderness, but as a patient landscape that rewards those willing to move through it with humility, preparation, and steady purpose. The oasis waits quietly on the horizon, and with the same calm pace that has carried countless caravans before yours, you continue toward it. The palms remain distant, their green crowns rising gently above the pale horizon like a quiet promise, rather than an invitation to hurry. They do not seem to grow larger from one minute to the next. Instead, they wait with the same patient certainty that has welcomed travelers across the Sahara for countless generations. Around you, no one changes their pace. The caravan understands that every oasis is reached by steady footsteps, never by wishful thinking. The afternoon unfolds without urgency. The warmth settles comfortably across your shoulders, softened by the loose folds of your robe. Every now and then, the breeze drifts across the open plain, carrying enough coolness to remind you that the desert is never defined by heat alone. It is a place of contrasts. Cool mornings become warm afternoons. Gentle winds may fade into complete stillness before returning again by evening. Travelers learn not to expect the landscape to remain unchanged for very long. You begin to notice how carefully everyone protects their energy. No movement is wasted. Water skins remain securely fastened until they are needed. Conversation appears only when it serves a purpose, leaving long stretches filled with the peaceful sounds of walking. Even the camels seem to understand this rhythm, conserving their strength without slowing the caravan's progress. Everything follows its natural pace. As another mile passes beneath your feet, the ground begins to reveal scattered patches of pale stone that glimmer softly beneath the afternoon sun. Some are no larger than your hand, while others form broad shelves of weathered rock rising gently above the surrounding sand. Their surfaces have been shaped by wind over thousands of years, rounded into smooth curves that almost resemble flowing water frozen in place. The sight reminds you that the Sahara has always been a landscape of movement. The wind moves the sand, the sun moves the shadows, the caravan moves across them both. Not long afterward, Amadou raises one hand again, and the line of travelers gradually comes to a comfortable halt. There is no concern in the gesture. It is simply time for a brief rest before the warmest part of the afternoon settles fully across the desert. The camels kneel one after another with practiced ease, folding their long legs beneath them until they rest comfortably upon the ground. A few travelers loosen straps to ease the weight upon their animals without unloading the larger bundles. Others quietly inspect sandals, brush fine sand from their clothing, or stretch their legs before sitting upon folded blankets spread across the smooth stone. Nothing about the pause feels hurried. One traveller removes a small clay cup from a carefully wrapped bundle, while another pours a modest amount of water into it. The drink is offered first to an older member of the caravan, before passing quietly to the next person. Every sip is measured, not from fear of scarcity, but from respect for the journey still ahead. You find yourself appreciating how naturally generosity appears here. It asks for no attention. Nearby, a small pouch is opened, revealing dried figs, roasted barley cakes, and a handful of almonds. The meal is wonderfully simple. No elaborate preparation is required. The food is chosen because it travels well, keeps for many days, and provides dependable nourishment without adding unnecessary weight to the caravan. Such practical choices shaped life along the Trans-Saharan routes as surely as geography itself. Many travellers also carried dates gathered from the oases of North Africa. Rich in natural sweetness and easy to preserve, they became one of the journey's most dependable foods. Combined with grain, dried fruit, and occasional fresh supplies found at larger settlements, they offered enough variety to sustain long crossings, without demanding complicated preparation. The meal is shared quietly beneath the open sky. While the others rest, your attention wanders toward the distant oasis once more. From here, it appears slightly clearer than before. Individual palm trunks begin to separate from one another, and beneath them you can almost distinguish darker patches, where shade gathers around precious water hidden from view. Oases were far more than welcome resting places. Across the centuries, they became centers of life in an otherwise demanding landscape. Date palms flourished where underground water reached the surface, their broad leaves creating shade beneath which smaller crops could also grow. Wells supported permanent communities whose hospitality allowed caravans to continue their journeys across enormous distances. Without these scattered islands of life, the ancient trade routes could never have developed into the remarkable network they eventually became. The road and the oasis depended upon one another. A merchant seated nearby quietly brushes sand from a folded map made not of paper, but of memory. He traces no lines with his finger, because none are needed. Instead, he looks toward the horizon, then toward the sun, before smiling gently to himself. Years of travel have taught him where the next well lies, how long the afternoon walk will last, and where the caravan is likely to camp before darkness arrives. Experience leaves its own kind of map. The rest comes to a peaceful end without anyone needing to announce it. Blankets are folded. Water skins are secured once again. The camels rise patiently beneath their loads, and the familiar rhythm returns almost immediately, as though the journey had merely paused long enough to take a quiet breath. Another peaceful mile begins. The oasis still waits ahead, calm and unchanging upon the horizon, while behind you the long trail of footprints gradually softens beneath the gentle work of the desert wind. Before many hours have passed, there will be little sign that the caravan was ever here at all. Only the road itself remembers. The shadows have begun to lengthen almost imperceptibly by the time the caravan settles back into its familiar rhythm. The pause beneath the open sky has refreshed both people and animals, and there is a quiet confidence in the way everyone resumes walking. No one needs to ask how much farther the oasis lies. Its cluster of palms has grown just enough to reassure experienced eyes that the day's steady progress is carrying the caravan exactly where it should. The road never demands certainty. It asks only patience. You notice that the guide occasionally glances towards the position of the sun rather than the ground beneath his feet. Across the Sahara, daylight itself serves as a trusted companion. During the day, the sun helps maintain direction, while after nightfall, the stars become equally dependable. Long before compasses were widely available, generations of guides learned to combine the movements of the sky with the familiar shapes of the land, creating a remarkable understanding of the desert that was both practical and deeply observed. Every journey strengthened that knowledge a little more. As another gentle stretch of ground unfolds before you, the surface changes once again. Pale sand gives way to a mixture of gravel and weathered stone, making each step feel slightly firmer beneath your sandals. Tiny plants appear more frequently here than they had earlier in the day. Most grow close to the ground, their small leaves carefully conserving precious moisture. They may seem insignificant, yet their presence quietly suggests that underground water is becoming a little less distant than it was this morning. The landscape offers its clues without speaking. A dragonfly suddenly passes across your path. Its delicate wings catch the sunlight for only a moment before it disappears toward the distant palms. The sight is brief, but it reminds you that water is rarely far from creatures that depend upon it. Experienced travelers would notice such small signs without excitement, simply adding them to the many quiet observations that guide life across the desert. Everything has its own purpose here. The caravan continues at the same measured pace, and you begin to appreciate how naturally each traveler understands their place within the group. Those walking beside the camels occasionally check the loads with a gentle touch. Others keep an eye on younger animals, making one of their earlier journeys across the Sahara. No instructions are exchanged because these habits have long since become routine. Shared experience makes many words unnecessary. You think about the countless caravans that once followed these same routes during the height of Trans-Saharan trade. Some carried dozens of camels, while the largest expeditions numbered in the hundreds or even thousands, particularly during periods of flourishing commerce between North Africa and the great empires of West Africa. Organizing such journeys required remarkable cooperation. Supplies had to be carefully calculated, trusted guides selected, and departure timed to take advantage of favorable conditions. None of that careful planning can be seen now, yet you are walking through the result of it. The breeze shifts gently, bringing with it a faint rustling from the distant palms. It is the first sound that does not belong to the open plain itself. Though still far away, the oasis has begun to make its quiet presence known. You find yourself smiling without quite realizing it. Not because the journey is ending, but because another peaceful stage of it is about to begin. The afternoon light softens ever so slightly, giving the surrounding landscape a warmer tone. Dark stones seem richer in color, while the pale sand reflects a gentle brightness rather than the sharper light of midday. The transition happens so gradually that it feels less like a change and more like the desert slowly relaxing after the warmth of the day. The world remains wonderfully calm. As you draw a little closer, individual date palms become easier to distinguish. Some lean gently, with the prevailing wind, while others stand almost perfectly upright. Their broad crowns cast islands of shade across the ground below, creating cooler spaces where people, animals, and cultivated plants have gathered for centuries. An oasis is not merely water surrounded by trees. It is a carefully tended place where generations have learned to protect one of the desert's greatest gifts. Wells must be maintained. Date palms require attentive care. Channels that guide precious water to nearby gardens must remain clear. The prosperity of these communities depends upon thoughtful stewardship rather than abundance. The caravan respects that understanding. No one speaks loudly as the palms grow nearer. There is an unspoken courtesy shared by travelers approaching a place that has welcomed so many before them. Water is precious, shade is valuable, and hospitality deserves gratitude. The first true oasis of your journey now stands patiently ahead, just beyond another gentle stretch of open ground. And with the same steady footsteps that have carried countless travelers across the Sahara for centuries, you continue toward its welcoming shade. The palms continue to grow more distinct with every unhurried step, though the caravan never abandons its measured pace. Their green crowns sway gently against the bright sky, creating the first broad patches of colour you have seen since leaving the settlement behind. Around them, the land seems to soften almost imperceptibly. The endless openness of the plain begins to gather itself around this small place where water has quietly shaped life for generations. The journey remains wonderfully calm. As you draw nearer, the air changes before the landscape does. The warmth is still present, yet there is a faint coolness carried by the breeze that was absent only an hour ago. It is delicate enough that you might overlook it if you are walking alone. The travelers do not comment on the difference. They simply continue forward, recognizing another familiar sign that the oasis lies close at hand. Even the wind seems to know the way. The guide allows the caravan to spread slightly wider as the path becomes easier beneath your feet. The gravel gives way to firmer ground, where the roots of long-established palms help hold the soil together. Small tufts of grass appear here and there, followed by clusters of low shrubs whose leaves look noticeably greener than those scattered across the open desert. Life gathers wherever water chooses to remain. You begin hearing sounds that have been absent for much of the day. At first, they are so quiet that they almost disappear beneath the steady footsteps of the caravan. A bird calls from somewhere among the palms. Another answers a few moments later. Leaves rustle softly overhead as the breeze moves through their broad fronds. The gentle murmur of insects replaces the great silence of the open plain. The oasis welcomes travelers with quiet voices. A narrow footpath branches away from the main route, winding toward a cluster of low buildings constructed from sun-dried mud brick. Their walls blend naturally with the surrounding earth, making them difficult to distinguish until you are surprisingly close. Flat roofs rest upon sturdy wooden beams, cut long ago from timber carried across great distances, while woven reed mats provide shade near several entrances. The settlement appears neither large nor crowded. It simply belongs here. Children pause from their games to watch the arriving caravan with quiet curiosity. Their smiles are warm but unhurried, as though welcoming travelers has always been part of ordinary life. Nearby, an older woman gently shakes ripe dates from a palm into a woven basket, while another carefully sorts them according to size. These are familiar tasks, repeated season after season beneath the shelter of the same trees. Nothing feels arranged for visitors. You are simply witnessing another peaceful afternoon. As the caravan reaches the outer edge of the oasis, the camels slow naturally. They seem to recognize this place almost as readily as the people guiding them. One by one, they kneel beneath the shade, while their loads remain secured for the moment. There will be time to unload later. First comes something far more important: water. Several stone-lined wells stand beneath the palms, protected by low walls, worn smooth through centuries of careful use. Thick ropes hang beside them, attached to sturdy leather buckets darkened by years of service. One traveller lowers a bucket steadily into the cool darkness below before lifting it back with practiced movements. Clear water catches the afternoon light as it reaches the surface. No one rushes forward. The animals are watered first, each receiving enough to refresh without waste. Their long journeys have taught them patience, as surely as the people beside them. Only after every camel has been tended do the travellers refill their own leather water skins, checking each stopper carefully before fastening it securely once more. Every drop is treated with quiet respect. You cup your hands as cool water flows across your fingers. After hours beneath the open sky, the sensation feels wonderfully refreshing. The water carries a faint taste of minerals gathered during its long passage beneath the earth, reminding you that this oasis depends upon hidden springs patiently supplying life beneath the desert surface. Without such groundwater, these palms would never have taken root. Without the palms, caravans would have struggled to cross the Sahara. The connection feels beautifully simple. Nearby, several merchants greet local residents with familiar smiles. There is no elaborate ceremony, only the comfortable warmth shared between people who have met many times before. News travels as naturally as trade itself. The easy exchange feels quietly familiar, much like neighbors today, pausing for a brief conversation before continuing with the rest of their day. Someone asks about conditions farther south. Another inquires whether a neighboring well remains dependable after the previous season. A traveler mentions another caravan expected to arrive within a few days. Information moves from person to person as quietly as the breeze through the palms. You begin walking along a narrow irrigation channel where clear water flows gently towards small garden plots shaded beneath the trees. Here, onions, herbs, and a few vegetables grow alongside the date palms, making careful use of every available drop. The system appears remarkably efficient, guiding water exactly where it is needed without unnecessary loss. Centuries of observation shaped these gardens. The people who cared for them understood that abundance in the Sahara rarely came from having more. It came from using what was available with wisdom and patience. A pleasant fragrance drifts through the shaded paths. Fresh dates drying upon woven mats release a gentle sweetness that mingles with the earthy scent of damp soil, an aroma almost forgotten after so many miles across the open desert. Nearby, someone prepares a simple meal over a small clay stove, fueled by dried palm fibers and carefully gathered wood. The quiet crackle of the fire blends naturally with the sounds of birds moving among the branches overhead. The oasis feels alive without ever becoming busy. As you continue exploring at an easy pace, you notice a small building whose doorway remains open despite the afternoon warmth. Inside, shelves hold neatly stacked bundles wrapped in cloth along with a few carefully protected manuscripts waiting to continue their journeys north or south with trusted merchants. Not every caravan carried books, but those that did helped ideas travel alongside salt, gold, and cloth, linking distant centers of learning across the African continent. Knowledge, like water, found its way wherever careful hands carried it. The shadows beneath the palms grow a little longer as the afternoon gently begins its slow turn toward evening. Travelers settle comfortably beneath the trees, grateful for the cool shade after many peaceful hours upon the road. Some quietly mend worn straps. Others brush fine dust from blankets before laying them neatly upon the ground. No one speaks of tomorrow's departure just yet. For this moment, the journey has offered exactly what it promised: a place to rest, to replenish, and to quietly prepare for the many miles that still await beyond the welcoming shelter of the oasis. The shade beneath the palms invites everyone to slow down a little more. After so many miles beneath the open sky, even the smallest patch of cool ground feels generous. Blankets are spread across the earth, not with the relief of travelers escaping hardship, but with the quiet satisfaction of reaching a familiar stopping place exactly as planned. The oasis has welcomed caravans for generations, and today it welcomes yours with the same calm patience. The afternoon settles gently around you. Nearby, one of the local caretakers begins drawing another bucket from the well. The thick rope slides smoothly across the worn stone edge, polished by countless hands over many centuries. As the bucket reaches the surface, a few clear drops fall back into the well, sending gentle ripples across the water below, before disappearing into the darkness again. Nothing here feels wasted. The travelers refill clay jars and leather water skins one at a time, careful not to crowd the well. There is no written rule requiring such order. Courtesy has simply become part of life wherever water is precious. Every person waits calmly for their turn, knowing that patience serves everyone far better than haste ever could. The quiet patience feels surprisingly familiar, much like waiting in a short line today, where everyone understands their turn will come soon enough. The oasis has taught this lesson for generations. You wander a little farther beneath the palms, where narrow paths weave between small gardens. Date palms rise high above you, their rough trunks marked by the places where older fronds once grew. Beneath their wide crowns, the shade creates a cooler world where smaller plants flourish. Herbs fill the air with a fresh scent, while neat rows of onions and leafy vegetables make careful use of the water flowing through shallow irrigation channels. The gardens seem to breathe quietly. This layered way of growing crops has long served oasis communities well. The tall palms provide fruit while shielding the gardens beneath from the strongest sunlight. Lower fruit trees and cultivated plants benefit from the cooler conditions, allowing several harvests to share the same precious space. In a land where every drop of water matters, thoughtful design becomes just as valuable as fertile soil. You begin to see that prosperity here depends upon careful balance rather than abundance. A small flock of doves settles among the branches overhead. Their soft cooing drifts through the oasis without disturbing its peaceful atmosphere. Somewhere nearby, a donkey pulls a simple wooden wheel that helps lift water into another irrigation channel. The slow turning of wood against wood creates a steady sound that blends naturally with rustling leaves and quiet conversation. Each quiet task has its own purpose. one of the merchants opens a carefully wrapped bundle beneath the shade. Inside are folded lengths of finely woven cloth protected from dust by another layer of linen. A local trader runs his fingers gently across the fabric, appreciating its texture before the two begin discussing its quality in calm, respectful voices. There's no pressure to reach an agreement quickly. Trade along these routes has always relied upon trust as much as negotiation. Good business grows patiently. Not every exchange involves valuable cargo. Another traveller quietly offers a handful of dried figs to a family tending the gardens. In return, they receive a small basket of freshly picked dates. Neither gift seems measured by exact value. Instead, the exchange reflects the simple generosity that has long helped travellers and oasis communities support one another across the vast distances of the Sahara. Hospitality becomes another form of wealth. As the warmth of the afternoon slowly begins to soften, more people emerge from the shaded homes. An elderly craftsman sits outside his doorway, repairing a leather saddlebag with remarkable precision. Each stitch is placed carefully, ensuring the bag will withstand many more journeys across the desert. A few steps away, another artisan shapes a wooden handle for a tool, smoothing its surface until it rests comfortably in the hand. Their work continues without interruption. You realize that life in the oasis follows its own steady rhythm regardless of how many caravans arrive. Travelers come and go, yet the palms continue producing fruit, the wells continue offering water, and families continue caring for the land exactly as their parents and grandparents once did. The caravan is welcomed, but it never becomes the center of the oasis. The community has its own quiet heartbeat. Amadou eventually gathers with several local residents beneath the broadest palm. Their conversation remains practical. They speak about the condition of wells farther south, the direction of recent winds, and the location of another caravan expected within the coming days. Such information has always been valuable. Accurate news can help travelers choose the safest pace, prepare suitable supplies, and avoid unnecessary delays. Knowledge travels as faithfully as merchandise. You listen without needing to hear every word. The calm expressions on their faces are reassuring enough. There's no mention of urgency, no sign of unexpected difficulty waiting ahead. The ancient route continues to reward those who prepare carefully and travel with patience. The road still stretches far beyond this oasis. Yet standing beneath the shade of these palms, with cool water close at hand, and familiar voices drifting gently through the gardens, the journey already feels richer than it did only a few hours ago. You have crossed the first quiet stage of the Sahara, not through dramatic adventure, but through steady movement, thoughtful preparation, and the quiet companionship of those who know these ancient roads well. The oasis has become more than a resting place. It has become part of the journey itself. The quiet conversations beneath the palms gradually blend into the gentle sounds of ordinary afternoon life. No one seems concerned with the passing hours. Time is measured here by familiar routines rather than by clocks. Water is drawn from the wells, gardens are tended with patient care, and travellers prepare for the next stage of their journey without feeling any need to rush. The oasis asks only that you slow your pace. You follow one of the narrow paths winding between the date palms, where the shade shifts softly with the breeze. Sunlight filters through the fronds in delicate patterns that move across the ground like gentle waves. Beneath the trees, the air feels noticeably cooler than the open desert beyond, creating a welcome contrast after the long morning's walk. Even the light seems quieter here. A young gardener kneels beside a shallow irrigation channel, clearing away a few small leaves that have gathered against a simple earthen gate. Once the water begins flowing freely again, it continues through the narrow channel with calm determination, reaching every corner of the small garden beyond. Nothing is wasted. Every drop has a destination. You begin to understand that these channels are as important to the oasis as the wells themselves. Drawing water from the ground is only the beginning. Guiding it wisely allows entire communities to flourish, where the surrounding desert offers little rainfall. Generations of careful observation have refined these methods, ensuring that each garden receives enough water without taking more than it truly needs. Quiet wisdom often reveals itself through ordinary work. Nearby, several women sit beneath a broad palm, sorting freshly harvested dates into woven baskets. Some fruit will remain here for local families, while the finest clusters will accompany future caravans across the Sahara. Dates were among the most dependable foods carried by travelers. Naturally sweet, easy to preserve, and rich in nourishment, they became faithful companions on journeys lasting many weeks. One basket after another is filled with patient hands. The rhythm of their work is unhurried. A little farther along, you notice several camels resting peacefully in the shade. Their burdens have now been removed and arranged neatly nearby beneath protective cloths. Without their heavy loads, the animals seem wonderfully relaxed, occasionally stretching their long necks toward bundles of dried fodder brought from the gardens. Their quiet breathing becomes part of the afternoon. The merchants take this opportunity to inspect ropes, tighten worn knots, and examine the wooden frames supporting their cargo. A frayed leather strap is replaced before it can become a problem. A cracked wooden peg is exchanged for another carved by a local craftsman. These simple repairs require little time, yet they help ensure that tomorrow's travel will begin as smoothly as today's. Preparation continues even during rest. The ancient trade routes depended upon such attention to detail. A neglected waterskin, a weakened rope, or an overlooked saddle could become an inconvenience many miles from the nearest oasis. By caring for small things today, travelers quietly protected the success of tomorrow's journey. Nothing important is left until the last moment. The breeze carries another pleasant fragrance through the palms. This time it comes from bread baking, inside a clay oven built against one of the mud brick homes. The warm aroma mingles gently with the sweetness of drying dates and the fresh scent of damp earth from the nearby gardens. After hours surrounded by the subtle scents of the open desert, these familiar smells feel especially comforting. The oasis nourishes more than thirst. A few travelers gather beneath a shaded shelter where tea is being prepared. Water warms slowly in a small metal pot before fragrant leaves are added. The drink is poured carefully into simple cups and shared among companions without ceremony. Conversation remains quiet, moving easily between recent journeys, familiar roads, and news carried from settlements many days away. One merchant mentions that another caravan recently arrived from the south, carrying fine leather from the Niger River region. Another speaks of skilled metalworkers farther north, whose tools are becoming increasingly sought after. These are not dramatic stories. They are simply the ordinary exchanges that have long connected distant communities across Africa. The road carries news as faithfully as goods. As the afternoon slowly advances, children return to their games beneath the palms. They weave effortlessly between irrigation channels and shaded paths, laughing softly before disappearing behind another cluster of trees. For them, caravans are not extraordinary events, but familiar visitors arriving with the changing seasons, bringing unfamiliar faces while following roads their families have known for generations. Life continues peacefully around them. You pause beside the edge of one garden and look back toward the open desert beyond the palms. From here, the Sahara appears almost unchanged, stretching outward in quiet shades of gold and stone until it meets the pale horizon. It is difficult to imagine that only a short walk separates this welcoming oasis from such immense open country. Yet that contrast is precisely what gives these places their importance. They are not interruptions to the journey. They are part of its rhythm. The caravan will remain here only as long as necessary. Water has been replenished. Supplies have been checked. The animals have rested beneath generous shade. Fresh dates, bread, and simple vegetables will accompany tomorrow's departure. Every quiet task completed today will make the next stage of the crossing a little easier. Already, your thoughts begin to drift gently toward the miles that still await beyond the palms. More wells, more distant horizons, more patient footsteps across landscapes that have guided travelers for centuries. For now, however, there is nowhere else to be. The oasis offers exactly what every weary traveler hopes to find: cool shade, fresh water, thoughtful hospitality, and a peaceful reminder that even the widest desert is connected by places where people have quietly welcomed one another for generations. As the gentle afternoon continues beneath the rustling palms, you find yourself grateful not only for the rest, but for becoming part of a journey that has unfolded with calm purpose since the very first step. The warmth of the afternoon begins its slow retreat, though the day is still far from ending. Beneath the shelter of the palms, the sunlight softens into gentle bands that move steadily across the gardens as the hours pass. Shadows stretch a little farther with each passing moment, quietly reminding everyone that the caravan's rest is gradually approaching its natural conclusion. Nothing asks to be hurried. A local farmer walks slowly along one of the irrigation channels, carrying a simple wooden rake across his shoulder. Reaching a small junction where the water divides, he pauses to lift a flat stone that serves as a gate. Instantly, the clear stream changes direction, flowing toward another section of the garden that has been patiently waiting its turn. There is something almost musical about the movement, not because of its sound, but because of its rhythm. Every field receives exactly what it needs. This careful sharing of water has shaped oasis life for centuries. In many settlements across the Sahara, families agreed upon precise times when each garden could receive water from the wells or underground channels. Such arrangements required cooperation rather than competition. Every household understood that the success of one harvest often depended upon the careful stewardship of the entire community. The desert quietly rewards those who work together. You continue strolling beneath the palms, noticing how different each tree appears despite their shared purpose. Some trunks lean gently after decades of prevailing winds. Others rise almost perfectly straight toward the sky. Older palms display thick, textured bark marked by generations of harvested fronds, while younger trees stand with smoother trunks, patiently growing into the place they will one day occupy within the grove. Even here, time moves gently. The date harvest itself follows a patient cycle. Long before the fruit ripens, skilled growers climb the palms to care for the flowering branches. During the growing season, heavy clusters are sometimes supported with woven ropes to prevent them from breaking under their own weight. When harvest finally arrives, each bunch is gathered carefully by hand before being sorted according to its quality and intended use. Nothing about the process is rushed. The finest dates may travel hundreds of miles with future caravans, while others remain here to nourish local families throughout the year. Some are dried beneath the warm desert air, allowing them to remain edible for many months without spoiling. Their remarkable ability to keep well made them one of the most dependable foods carried across the Sahara. The journey depends upon simple things done well. Near one of the homes, an elderly woman carefully spreads woven mats across the ground before arranging fresh dates in neat rows beneath the afternoon sun. A younger child watches closely, occasionally handing her another basket when asked. There are few spoken instructions between them. Knowledge passes naturally through observation, just as it has for countless generations. The smallest lessons often last the longest. A gentle breeze stirs the broad palm fronds overhead, producing a soft rustling that rises and falls like distant waves upon a quiet shore. The sound blends with the steady trickle of water moving through the irrigation channels and the occasional call of birds settling deeper within the trees. The oasis has its own peaceful orchestra. You notice several travelers sitting together beneath one of the larger palms, with sheets of parchment spread carefully across a folded blanket. One man slowly copies a short passage into another manuscript, using a reed pen dipped into dark ink. Every letter is formed with remarkable patience. There is no effort to write quickly. Accuracy matters far more than speed. Books travelled these ancient routes almost as faithfully as merchants themselves. While gold and salt often receive the greatest attention in stories about the Trans-Saharan trade, written knowledge crossed the desert as well. Religious texts, works of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, poetry, and law all journeyed between North Africa and the great centres of learning farther south. Cities such as Timbuktu would later become renowned not only for commerce, but also for scholarship, where carefully copied manuscripts preserved generations of human understanding. Ideas, like caravans, travelled one careful step at a time. Amadou quietly joins the group for a few moments, exchanging respectful greetings, before examining a simple map drawn upon parchment. Unlike the invisible maps carried within memory, this one records important settlements, approximate distances between wells, and notes gathered from previous journeys. Even so, everyone understands that parchment alone cannot replace lived experience. The desert changes gradually, and only those who continue walking its paths truly know its present condition. Knowledge grows stronger when memory and observation travel together. The afternoon light becomes noticeably warmer now, giving the mud brick homes a gentle golden tone. Thin columns of smoke begin rising from several cooking fires as evening meals all lowly take shape. The aroma of baking flatbread mingles with simmering lentils, onions, and fragrant herbs gathered from the gardens nearby. The smells drift peacefully beneath the palms. A merchant who has crossed this route many times quietly remarks to a younger companion, "A good oasis feeds tomorrow as much as today." The younger traveller smiles, looking around at the wells, the gardens, the shaded homes, and the resting camels. There is little more to say. Everything around you quietly proves the truth of those few words. Without these places, the ancient road across the Sahara could never have remained reliable. Every oasis became a thread, holding together a network that stretched across an entire continent. Water refreshed weary travellers. Shade protected people and animals alike. News passed between strangers who soon became familiar faces. Trade flourished because trust had somewhere peaceful to rest. You begin to understand that the oasis is not simply a stop along the road. It is one of the reasons the road exists at all. As the afternoon slowly leans toward evening, preparations quietly begin for the next stage of the journey. Fresh water skins rest beneath the shade, now filled and carefully sealed. Repaired harnesses lie ready beside the camels. Small bundles of dates, flatbread, and vegetables have been packed for the days ahead. Nothing has been overlooked. The caravan is not leaving yet. For now, there is still time to enjoy the cool shade, the gentle rustling of the palms, and the comforting knowledge that tomorrow's road has already begun with today's careful preparation. The day begins to loosen its gentle hold upon the oasis. The brightest light has softened into warmer tones, and the long leaves of the date palms cast graceful patterns across the gardens below. Every path that seemed bright only a short while ago now alternates between patches of sunlight and cool shade, creating a landscape that feels even more peaceful than it did during the afternoon. The air grows pleasantly cooler. You find yourself returning toward the center of the oasis, where the wells continue their quiet work. Travelers still arrive one by one to refill a cup or wash the dust from their hands before preparing the evening meal. The ropes creak softly as another leather bucket descends into the clear water below, then rises again, carrying enough for another family, another traveler, another patient moment along the road. The well never appears hurried. It simply continues offering what it has always offered. Nearby, several camels stand peacefully chewing dried fodder gathered earlier in the day. Without the weight of their cargo, they move slowly between patches of shade, occasionally stretching their long necks toward the lower branches of the palms. Their calm nature seems perfectly suited to this place. After carrying heavy loads across the open desert, they now rest without complaint, conserving their strength for the miles that still lie ahead. The journey depends upon their quiet endurance. One of the caravan's craftsmen kneels beside a wooden saddle frame, running his hand carefully across its surface. A small crack discovered earlier has now been reinforced with a thin strip of leather and a pair of carefully shaped wooden pegs. He examines his work one final time before setting the saddle aside with quiet satisfaction. Nothing complicated was required, only patience and careful hands. These small repairs rarely find their way into stories about the Trans-Saharan trade. Histories often remember kingdoms, rulers, and valuable cargo. Yet every successful crossing also depended upon people willing to mend a loose strap, sharpen a worn knife, patch a water skin, or replace a broken buckle before it caused greater difficulty. Entire caravans moved safely because countless ordinary tasks were completed with care. Great journeys are often built upon small responsibilities. As you continue walking beneath the palms, you notice a pair of young apprentices helping an older basket maker weave fresh palm fibers into sturdy containers. Their fingers move more slowly than his, occasionally pausing while he demonstrates another careful fold before allowing them to try again. He offers very few words. The lesson unfolds through observation. Palm fiber has long been one of the oasis's most useful materials. From it come baskets for carrying dates, mats for resting beneath the trees, ropes for everyday work, and coverings that protect valuable goods during long journeys across the desert. Almost every part of the date palm serves a purpose. The fruit provides food. The leaves become useful materials. Even the trunks eventually find new life supporting roofs and shelters. Very little is discarded. The oasis teaches the value of using every gift wisely. Not far away, several travelers sit together beneath a broad palm, sharing a simple evening meal before the light begins to fade. Fresh bread is broken into generous pieces and dipped into a warm stew prepared from lentils, onions, herbs, and a little olive oil carried from the north. A bowl of ripe dates passes quietly from one person to the next, followed by cool water drawn only moments earlier from the well. The meal is wonderfully uncomplicated. No one rushes to finish. Conversation drifts gently between familiar subjects. One merchant recalls a particularly clear night crossing several years ago, when the stars seemed close enough to touch. Another remembers an elderly guide who could recognize distant wells by the shape of the surrounding hills long before anyone else noticed them. Their stories carry no exaggeration. They are simply memories gathered along roads walked many times before. The desert leaves lasting impressions without demanding dramatic tales. You begin to appreciate how these conversations preserve knowledge almost as effectively as written records. A younger traveler listens carefully while older companions describe reliable resting places, changing wind patterns, and the habits of experienced caravan animals. Such observations may seem ordinary today, yet they become invaluable when remembered weeks later in the open desert. Experience grows stronger when it is shared. As the afternoon quietly gives way toward evening, more birds return to the palms. Their calls become slightly more frequent before gradually settling into comfortable silence. Somewhere within the grove, a pair of doves finds its place among the branches, while smaller birds disappear into the dense crowns above. The oasis prepares for night as gently as it welcomed the day. You look beyond the last line of palms toward the open Sahara, waiting patiently outside the gardens. From here, the desert seems almost unchanged, its wide plains glowing softly beneath the lowering sun. Tomorrow, those same landscapes will once again become your companion, carrying the caravan farther south along one of history's most enduring trade routes. For now, however, the road can rest. So can those who travel it. A few lanterns are carefully lit near the homes as the natural light continues to soften. Their gentle glow remains modest, illuminating doorways and pathways rather than pushing back the coming evening. Families gather quietly beneath sheltered courtyards, while travelers finish preparing the supplies that will accompany tomorrow's departure. Every bundle has been checked. Every water skin has been filled. Every animal has been tended with care. There is a quiet satisfaction in knowing that nothing important has been forgotten. The oasis has offered fresh water, nourishing food, dependable shade, practical repairs, and generous hospitality without asking for recognition in return. It has simply fulfilled the role it has played for centuries, supporting the steady flow of people, goods, and ideas across the immense Sahara. As the first hints of evening settle gently among the palms, you realize that this peaceful place has become woven into the journey itself. Long after tomorrow's footsteps carry you back into the open desert, the memory of cool water, rustling leaves, and welcoming voices will continue traveling beside you. The road stretches onward, but tonight it is enough simply to rest. The evening settles gently over the oasis, and one by one the final sounds of the day's work fade into peaceful silence. The wells have been covered for the night. The gardens rest beneath the shelter of the palms. The camels kneel quietly beneath the stars, their long journey paused until the coming dawn. Above you, the Sahara reveals one of its greatest gifts. Without cities or distant lights to soften the darkness, the heavens seem almost impossibly clear. Thousands upon thousands of stars stretch from one horizon to the other, forming the same celestial map that has guided merchants, pilgrims, scholars, and explorers across this immense desert for centuries. Somewhere among those stars shines the North Star, while countless familiar constellations quietly continue their endless journey across the night sky. For generations, experienced guides have trusted these same lights. Long before modern maps, long before compasses became common, long before engines crossed the desert, the stars were enough. You lie back beneath the palms, listening to the soft rustle of the leaves above and the distant, steady breathing of the resting camels. A gentle breeze carries the coolness of the coming night, replacing the warmth of the day with calm, refreshing air. The miles already travelled begin to feel wonderfully distant, yet the journey itself is only beginning. Far to the south, beyond countless dunes, rocky plateaus, hidden wells, and welcoming oases, great kingdoms continue to flourish. Cities filled with scholars, markets overflowing with gold, salt, cloth, and books. Communities connected by one of the greatest trade networks the world has ever known. Tomorrow, your caravan will leave this peaceful oasis behind and continue deeper into the heart of the Sahara, following ancient paths that have linked continents for well over 1,000 years. But tonight, there is nowhere else to be. Only the cool desert air, the quiet whisper of palm leaves, the endless stars above, and the comforting knowledge that, just as countless travellers before you discovered, every great journey across the Sahara is completed not through speed, but through patience, one calm, steady step at a time. So, as the oasis falls completely silent and the desert night gently wraps itself around the caravan, allow your thoughts to drift as peacefully as the wind moving through the palms. And perhaps, somewhere beyond your dreams, the ancient road continues, waiting patiently for tomorrow.